The most enduring family fractures rarely begin with a massive betrayal. They start with something as small as a pen. A parent stands in an aisle, thumb flying across a smartphone. A teenager reaches out to show them something, senses the tension, and immediately recoils. They are in a stationery store. The teen is holding a notebook, looking for a brief moment of shared interest or a simple nod of emotional validation. The parent doesn't look up, instead delivering a flat, functional answer meant to close the loop and end the interaction as quickly as possible. Affection remains present, but it's being filtered through two systems that simply do not share a common language for what is happening in this moment. We are watching two people run entirely different, mutually unintelligible survival protocols in real time. To understand the breakdown, we have to look at the first neurobiological model, the survival-based paradigm of Gen X or immigrant parents. This nervous system was forged in uncurated solitude or early life scarcity. It learned to map safety exclusively to self-reliance. For this group, safety is measured by functional provision and logistical stability. Taking care of the how is how they take care of the person. This stands in direct opposition to the Gen Z emotional attunement paradigm. This modern model defines safety through active co-regulation, the continuous, visible presence of emotional validation. Look at how these two models process the same information. One operates on a rigid, predictable frequency, the other on a fluid, responsive one. Because these waves never align, a solution that one side sees as efficient problem-solving, the other side records as emotional abandonment. This friction is inevitable. Care itself has become mutually unintelligible because the underlying mechanisms for providing it have changed. We need to isolate the cognitive state of that parent standing in the aisle. They're struggling under the invisible load, the unceasing cognitive labor required to keep a household functioning. Their working memory is saturated with administrative tasks, tracking insurance payments, managing school schedules, and calculating the financial cost of the next 6 months. That smartphone acts as the command center for this load, the primary tool that prevents the family's logistical needs from drifting into chaos. The attempt to shut down the conversation is a neurological strategy to keep the system online and prevent a total cognitive crash. In their view, prioritizing the macro stability of the family over a minor emotional exchange is their most responsible path forward. This perspective is anchored at the base of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Their nervous system is hyper-focused on physiological safety and functional competence. Childhoods defined by unpredictability or immigrant scarcity permanently lock the brain into these foundational tiers. When structural survival is a daily task, higher-tier emotional buffering begins to look like a luxury rather than a necessity. A nervous system wired for survival cannot prioritize emotional nuance while it feels the house is still being built. Now, look at that same moment through the eyes of the teenager. They are experiencing technoference, where a digital device physically severs a moment of human connection. To the adolescent brain, which relies on eye contact for safety, the sudden focus on a screen registers a break in the attachment bond. This attachment system requires undivided attention and co-regulation to map the world as a safe place. When the parent's attention is divided, the teen's nervous system is starved of the feedback it needs to stay regulated. The smartphone is the parent's tool for family survival, but it functions as a neurological barrier to the teen's psychological safety. This severed connection can lead to rejection-sensitive dysphoria, an intense emotional pain triggered by perceived distance. As this model shows, a perceived lack of parental affection or differential treatment feeds directly into high rejection sensitivity. This forces the brain into a state of anxious and angry expectations. It interprets a neutral distraction as an active threat of abandonment. Modern mental health awareness and therapy speak have sharpened this. The teen now expects immediate, visible emotional repair as a standard of health. Their nervous system isn't being dramatic. It is accurately reporting a sudden withdrawal of its primary safety net. Let's place both of these internal worlds back into the stationery store. The parent node is struggling under a high-capacity warning from the invisible load above their head. Simultaneously, the teen node is emitting a red alarm pulse for rejection sensitivity. One person is trying to save the family through efficiency. The other is trying to save the relationship through presence. This is a real-time failure of systems integration. Neither person has failed the other. Their operating models simply cannot connect. The tragic irony of the generational divide is that both sides are acting out of a drive for connection, even while their chosen tools cause harm. The survival model isn't obsolete. It builds the grit and functional autonomy required to navigate a difficult world. The attunement model isn't fragile. It builds the intimacy and emotional intelligence required to sustain deep relationships. The challenge is building a translation layer that converts the language of provision into the language of presence. Next, we'll look at the specific protocols families are using to bridge this gap. By identifying the invisible architecture of the other generation, we can stop fighting the individual and start fixing the system.